I hope you all enjoy this as much as I'm going to. So, with that being said, we're going to start off with Justin. He's a writer for the Redbird Rants, and you can follow him on Nostalgic Baseball Geezer. So, go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, so I wrote an article about Bob Gibson a week or so back. I guess genesis of it. I enjoy watching old World Series games on YouTube. So that lets you know about my thrilling nightlife where I'll watch Bob Gibson pitching. And when I was watching the 1968 series, Game 7, deciding game, Cardinals versus Detroit Tigers. And it was Gibson versus Mickey Lolich, and they go 6 innings scoreless. There's a unfortunate misplay by Curt Flood that kind of ruins it for Gibson, costs the Cardinals chance at winning it. But the whole time that I was watching, in the back of my mind, I had this idea of I'm looking for Bob Gibson to stand out in some way because I keep hearing about how intimidating he is, and I've heard all these stories. There's a very famous quote from Hank Aaron, and I'll just read it to you verbatim. Hank Aaron said this about Bob Gibson. He said, "You don't dig in against Bob Gibson. He'll knock you down. He'd knock down his own grandmother if she dared to challenge him. Don't stare at him. Don't smile at him. Don't talk to him. He doesn't like it. If you happen to hit a home run, don't run too slow. Don't run too fast. If you happen to want to celebrate, get in the tunnel first. And if he hits you, don't charge the mound because he's a gold glove boxer." And that sounds pretty intimidating to me. But when I was watching this World Series game, I just didn't see that Bob Gibson. I saw a great pitcher. I saw someone who had an incredible slider, great mound presence, had some pop on his fastball, controlled the game. I guess I was expecting him to be knocking down hitters every other at bat, and it just wasn't happening. Didn't hit anyone. He threw up and in a couple times, maybe. I wouldn't even call them brushback pitches. And so then I watched a few other Bob Gibson games in the World Series, and he hit a batter in one that I saw, but it was not intentional. It was clearly not trying to intimidate a batter. There was, I think, Mickey Mantle was on first base or something. I can't remember the hitter he plunked, but it was not in a situation where he was trying to make a statement or anything. So this idea of Bob Gibson being this intimidating presence, I just didn't see it with my own eyes. So I kind of looked into a few things about Bob Gibson that I hadn't maybe considered before, just assumed that he was this intimidating presence. And it was because of a couple things. The two main claims that I kept hearing that I think are maybe misconceptions, or that he was a headhunter, which is the first one that we'll talk about. And then the second one, which we'll get to in a second, is that he just looked intimidating. So for the headhunter one, there's not really any data for brushback pitches that I could find, but hit by pitch data, there's that out there. And pretty simple calculations, you can see how frequently Bob Gibson was hitting guys. And it came out to one hits batsman every 38 innings, which for Bob Gibson, that's probably 5 ball games there, maybe 4 if you're talking about 68. So I was thinking it would be more frequently than that. The comp for him was Greg Maddux. So Greg Maddux hit batters at about the same rate, one batter per 37 innings. So Maddux actually hit guys a little bit more frequently. And I don't think anyone thinks Greg Maddux was the most intimidating presence out there. So that was like the comp for him. And then around his time, the other intimidating pitcher that was supposedly a headhunter was Drysdale. And then the more recent one, who you guys love, I'm sure, is Pedro. And Drysdale came out to one hit batsman every 22 innings, and Pedro was one every 20 innings. Drysdale and Pedro, you're talking about every 3 games or so. Gibson, maybe every 5 games. Just in terms of just hitting guys to make a statement, the stats don't really bear out that Gibson was out there plunking guys with a higher frequency than other people. And I looked at the postseason stats too for Gibson, and he hit batters at about the same frequency in the postseason. And just from going back and looking at video, the ones that I saw, or the one that I saw, it just didn't seem like he was making a statement on that either. It just seemed like it was one that got away from him. So I think the headhunter thing, if you read interviews from Gibson before he passed, he didn't really love that idea that he was known as this super intimidating headhunter guy out there. And the data doesn't really back up that he was purposefully trying to go ahead and bean players.
Why do you think he got that moniker put on him? Just
Yeah,
because he
I
was
mean,
so filthy?
I think and we'll get back to this later too. I'll come back to it a couple times, but it's just he's a great pitcher. And I think sometimes you hear some of these stories. He was a Gold Glove boxer, and then we'll talk about him looking intimidating too. And then as the years go by, I think just some of these stories just snowball a little bit and build on each other, and it builds up this mythology a little bit. Not saying that he's not intimidating, because I wouldn't want to go ahead and face him. I think any great pitcher is intimidating in their own right just on their talent. But I think that's primarily what it is talent. And thrown inside chin music, there's really no evidence that he's doing that any more than any other pitcher in the 60s and 70s. Owning the inside of the plate, those kind of things, that's pretty much commonplace. It's not something that there's any evidence to suggest he was doing more frequently than other guys. Just maybe he looked scarier to some people, and maybe he had the persona as being a headhunter, but it's not because of anything Gibson really did that he has this misperception as a headhunter.
Yeah. He's not Pedro Martinez pointing at his head when a player comes up to the plate. Yeah.
And that's not to say he didn't bean people on purpose sometimes. Just every other pitcher in the major leagues has at some point, but nothing out of the ordinary in regards to that.
Yeah. This is actually a decent question. And it's hard because Justin already said it, right? We don't have data on guys that threw up and in, but didn't hit any guys. It's just a ball in the book. So like can't really tell unless you saw it with your own eyes. But it's a good
And you
question.
got guys from further back that had higher rates too. I don't remember the exact number, but Walter Johnson's hitting guys more frequently. He was an intimidating presence too, threw really hard for back in the 1910s and 20s. He doesn't have that same reputation as Gibson as a headhunter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome.
The second one is the look. And you can see lots of pictures like the one up there about him just having a scowl on his face. And watching the games, I really didn't see a big scowl on his face, but there's pretty good reason why he kind of looked intimidating. And it wasn't his height. He was 6'1". Koufax was an inch taller. Drysdale was more than a couple inches taller. So it wasn't that he was particularly tall or built. It was just that he had this look on his face of intensity. And the reason behind it, Gibson said during his career, he was wearing glasses when he wasn't on the mound. And when he came out to the mound, he didn't wear glasses. So he was trying to see the catcher's signs. And so he was intently looking to go ahead and see what the catcher was calling. And as a result of this, he had this look on his face that looked like he was scowling, but it was really just him trying to focus and read what the catcher's saying, squinting and looking like that, not really trying to go ahead and glare at people, just something that he was doing to go ahead and see signs. So that's another thing out of his control. I guess it's within his control. He could have thrown on glasses, thrown on some of those rec specs that you see Chris Sabo rocking in the 80s and 90s. He could have done that. I don't think that would have made him look more intimidating either, but not really anything that he was doing with any intent. It just looked that way because he couldn't see that well.
Yeah, that's funny. I would love to see him with Sabo glasses on. I'm kind of picturing it right now, but yeah, that's pretty cool.
The other thing I mentioned in the article is just his fastball, which rates as a pretty hard thrower, but the estimates are mid, low 90s, maybe topping out around 95, 96, which is very fast for back then, but it's not faster than some of the other peers that he has. Definitely not touching 3 digits like Nolan Ryan. Some of this intimidating idea that we have behind Bob Gibson, it's not really matching that he stands out above anyone else in terms of like speed on his fastball, him looking intimidating. It's mainly just him squinting because he can't see. And then the headhunter thing, I think, is just completely overblown.
Yeah. I mean, that's baseball in a nutshell, right? I mean, there's tons of stories out there where, kind of like you said, kind of snowballs and now it becomes baseball lore, baseball legend. They say like, Babe Ruth pointing the bat to center field. He wasn't really, he was just doing it during a warm-up swing. Like, just something in his routine, but it looks like he's calling a shot and it's now turned into Babe called a shot and then hit it. So, I mean,
and it's hard to kind of turn around that momentum too. The Yankees with their new bats is the latest story that came out. There's, maybe these new bats have some special powers, but it's been a game or two for a couple players using these bats. I don't know if that's any like proof of anything yet. Like I think we need more of the sample size than a couple games to say that it's really anything.
I mean, they put up 33 runs in those 2 games, so
They did.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be. And if it is something, I mean, we'll find out over time. And clearly, other teams would copy it. It's not like there's some conspiracy that's going to help out the Yankees here. I mean, other teams will copy it if it is something.
Yeah, they already have. Some other players had it.
There's already a couple teams jumping in on that, and so
yeah, absolutely. Well, that was awesome. I love Bob Gibson. He's one of my top 5 starting pitchers of all time.
Just because it will die down soon.
Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned top 5. Ranking things like that. I'm just starting the ridiculous work of trying to do a top 100 list of players of all time, because Joe Posnanski did one, and I looked at it and thought it was pretty good, but like a lot of things in my life, I'm like, I'm going to tweak it a little bit and change some things and reanalyze these, and probably not do things any better, but try to come up with my own list. So I'll be curious to see where Gibson ends up, but for his era, kind of in the 60s and early 70s, he's got to be the top guy in my book.
Yeah, I like. You just look at that. Was it the 62 season where he had the 1.12 ERA? I mean,
the 68 season.
68 season. Yeah, just absolutely
ERA in the modern era.
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, the guy known for breaking baseball and them having to change him out because of what he did. Very large figure, looming figure in baseball history.
Yeah, you got to go back to dead ball era like Tim Keefe to get a lower ERA than Gibson had that year.
Yeah, crazy. All right. Anything else on Bob Gibson from either one of you? No? Good?
They're scared straight by that.
No, I just think like you said, that domination itself will make a guy intimidating. It's going to make you scared to go up there to the plate to face him because you're going to be embarrassed.
Yeah, right. Pretty big motivator. Or demotivator, I guess. But awesome. Yeah, that was incredible, Justin. Thank you.